You need to watch this if you crave chills down your spine. Welcome to Soul Studios. Here, true crime meets the unknown. Suspense lurks in every shadow and supernatural forces whisper from the dark. We craft chilling, edge-of-your-seat short stories inspired by the eerie, the unexplained, and the most haunting mysteries. 3 new stories drop every week, each one darker than the last. Are you ready to step inside? Subscribe now before the next story finds you.
There's a place where people go missing without a trace, where doors lock from the inside, where the walls have seen too much. Emily Carter and Rachel Simmons walked into their apartment, but they never walked out. No forced entry, no signs of struggle, just 2 bodies frozen in terror. They weren't alone that night, and neither were the others before them. Because apartment 3B has a history of people disappearing, a history of shadows moving when no one is there, a history of something watching. Once you see it, it sees you too. The silent apartment, where terrifying true crime, supernatural mysteries, and psychological horror collide. Subscribe now before it silences you too. Chapter 1. Radio silence. The town of Willow Springs was small, the kind of place where people knew each other by name, and a new face rarely went unnoticed. Nestled between rolling hills and a dense pine forest, it was home to Willow Springs University, a modest but well-respected college where students enjoyed the slower pace of life compared to the chaos of big cities. Among those students were Emily Carter and Rachel Simmons, best friends and roommates, both bright, ambitious, and full of plans for the future. Emily, a journalism major, had dreams of becoming an investigative reporter. She had a knack for uncovering the hidden details in any story, often getting caught up in deep research at the expense of sleep. Rachel, a psychology student, was fascinated by the human mind, its strengths, its weaknesses, and the eerie places it could go when pushed too far. They were different in many ways, yet their friendship balanced perfectly. Their apartment, Unit 3B, in an older but well-maintained building off campus, had been their home for nearly 2 years. It wasn't fancy, but it was cozy, a second-floor unit with a view of the street, mismatched furniture, and a small balcony where they would drink coffee in the mornings. It was safe. It was theirs. That's why it was so strange when they suddenly went silent. It started subtly at first. Emily didn't respond to a group message about an upcoming study session. Rachel, usually quick to react to texts, didn't reply when her friend Jessica asked if she wanted to grab coffee. By the second day of unanswered messages, their friends assumed they were just overwhelmed with exams. But then they started missing classes. Emily's journalism professor was the first to raise a flag. She had never missed a deadline, but her final article, due that Monday, never arrived. Rachel, who never skipped her morning psychology lecture, was marked absent 2 days in a row. By day 4, the concern turned into something more unsettling. Their social media accounts went silent. Their phones went straight to voicemail, and no one had seen them come or go from their apartment. Their classmates began whispering about them in hushed tones. Was it stress? A breakdown? Had they simply left town without telling anyone? Rachel's mother, Karen Simmons, grew especially worried. She spoke to Rachel almost every day, even if just for a quick check-in. The lack of response made her uneasy. At first she convinced herself that Rachel was just caught up in schoolwork, but by the 5th day of silence, the feeling in her gut told her something was very wrong. She called the apartment over and over. No answer. She called Emily's parents. They hadn't heard from her either. Finally, late that afternoon, Karen called the Willow Springs Police Department and asked for a welfare check. The request was routine. College students sometimes went off the radar for a few days, caught up in their studies or personal issues. But as the officer took down Karen's worried words, a quiet tension hung in the air. Something felt off. And by the time the police arrived at apartment 3B, they would soon discover that Karen's instincts were right. Something was very wrong. Chapter 2. The Discovery. The night air was crisp as officers Daniel Mercer and Lisa Patel pulled into the small parking lot of Willow Ridge Apartments. The building, a modest three-story complex, was nestled between rows of pine trees, its dimly lit corridors giving off an eerie, abandoned feel. Mercer, a veteran cop with 15 years on the force, had seen his share of strange welfare checks, most of which turned out to be nothing. Oversleeping students, dead phone batteries, or someone just needing space. But something about this one felt different. Patel, his partner of 3 years, was newer to the force but sharp as hell. She had an instinct for when things weren't right, and the second they stepped out of the car, she felt it. "This place gives me the creeps," Patel muttered, scanning the dimly lit exterior. "Yeah, well, let's hope this is just 2 college kids who forgot to check their messages," Mercer replied, though he didn't believe that. The 2 officers made their way up the stairs to apartment 3B. No answer, Mercer knocked hard on the door. "Willow Springs Police Department. Rachel? Emily? Anyone home?" Silence. Patel pressed her ear to the door. Nothing. No movement. No muffled voices. No rustling of someone waking up and coming to answer. Mercer knocked again, harder this time. "If you're in there, we just need to make sure you're okay. Can you open the door?" Still nothing. Patel pulled out her phone and double-checked the request details. "Their families haven't heard from them in days," she murmured. "No one's seen them. Professors reported them missing from class. Their phones go straight to voicemail." "That's not good," Mercer said. He turned to the building manager, Fred Coleman, who had been standing anxiously behind them, twisting a spare key in his hands. Fred was in his late 50s, balding, with tired eyes that spoke of years managing students who came and went without a second thought. But this wasn't normal. "I ain't seen 'em," Fred muttered. "Not in days. Usually hear 'em moving around. Rachel's got this laugh, real loud, echoes through the hall. But lately it's been dead quiet." Mercer extended his hand. "Key." Fred hesitated. "I don't—" "Fred," Mercer said, voice firm. "Key." With a reluctant nod, Fred handed it over. Mercer slid the key into the lock and turned it with a soft click. The door creaked open, revealing darkness beyond. A faint, stale odour seeped out. Something off. Not quite decay, but something unnatural. Something that made the hairs on Patel's arms rise. Hand on his holster, Mercer stepped inside first. The silent apartment. The living room was eerily still. Everything looked normal. A coffee table sat in the centre of the room, a few textbooks stacked neatly on top. A knitted throw was draped over the arm of the couch. The kitchen counter held a single plate of untouched food, the pasta long since dried out. No overturned furniture, no broken glass, no sign of forced entry. Patel stepped inside, her boots barely making a sound on the hardwood floor. "Hello," she called out cautiously. No answer. Her gut tightened. Something was very, very wrong. She moved deeper into the living room, and then she saw them. The frozen terror. "Oh, my God," Patel whispered. Mercer followed her gaze and felt his stomach drop. On the couch, sitting side by side, were Emily Carter and Rachel Simmons. Both girls were motionless, both lifeless. Their eyes were wide open, locked in an unseeing stare, their faces twisted into an expression of absolute terror. Rachel's hands rested in her lap, fingers curled slightly inward. Emily's mouth was parted, lips frozen mid-breath, as if she had been about to speak when something stopped her. Patel swallowed back the bile rising in her throat. The way they were sitting, perfectly upright, untouched, undisturbed, it was as if they had simply stopped existing in the middle of their night. "Jesus Christ," Mercer muttered, stepping closer. He half expected them to blink, to breathe, but they didn't. Patel reached out with shaking fingers, pressing 2 fingers against Emily's wrist. Cold, not just cold, icy. Rachel was the same, both long dead. Mercer's hand went to his radio. "Dispatch, this is Officer Mercer. We have 2 confirmed DOAs at Willow Ridge Apartments, Unit 3B, requesting immediate backup and medical personnel. No obvious cause of death." A crackle of static. "Copy that, Officer Mercer. EMS en route." Patel turned, scanning the room, trying to make sense of it. No forced entry, no struggle, no wounds, no signs of a break-in. Yet something had been here. Something had done this. And whatever it was, it had left no trace. Chapter 3. No signs of a struggle. The scene inside apartment 3B was eerily still, the air thick with an unsettling quiet as Detective Mark Holloway stepped into the living room. His eyes swept over the 2 lifeless bodies on the couch, their frozen expressions of pure gut-wrenching terror making his stomach twist. It didn't make sense. He had been a cop long enough to know the signs of violence, of struggle, of murder. But this? There was nothing. No blood, no bruising, no defensive wounds. The apartment itself was completely undisturbed, as if the girls had just sat down to watch TV and stopped existing. Holloway exhaled slowly, turning as the forensic team entered behind him. A crime scene with no crime. The forensic techs moved quickly, setting up lights, snapping photos and dusting for fingerprints. Dr. Evan Ridley, the lead forensic investigator, crouched beside Emily Carter, carefully inspecting her stiffened form. No trauma. Ridley muttered. No signs of struggle. Their clothes aren't torn. Nothing looks disturbed. It's like they just sat here and died. Holloway didn't like that answer. People didn't just sit down and die. No sign of forced entry? Patel asked from the doorway. None, Ridley confirmed. Holloway walked over to the front door, examining the locks. The deadbolt was still engaged from the inside. The windows were locked shut. Nothing was stolen. Wallets, laptops, even a stack of cash on Rachel's desk remained untouched. If this had been a robbery, it would have been a mess. But the apartment was too perfect, like the last movements of its occupants had been suddenly cut off. The small details that didn't add up. Holloway's gaze fell to the coffee table. A single plate of untouched food sat there, the pasta dried and stiffened. He bent down, noting the way the fork rested beside it, like someone had been about to take a bite, but never did. Beside it was Rachel's laptop, the screen dark. He pressed the power button. Nothing. Laptop's dead, Holloway muttered. It was still open when we found them, Patel noted, but it was improperly shut down. That was important. People didn't just leave their laptop running in the middle of the night and never touch it again. Something interrupted them. Holloway turned to the forensics team. Get that laptop to Monroe in digital forensics. I want to know what they were doing before they... He trailed off, looking back at the bodies. Before they what? Stopped existing? Contacting the families. As the forensic team worked, Holloway and Patel stepped outside into the cool night air, their radios crackling softly. The next part was always the worst. The notification. Patel exhaled and dialed Rachel Simmons' mother, Karen. It was nearly 3 a.m., and it took several rings before the woman answered, her voice tired but instantly alert. Hello? Who is this? Mrs. Simmons, this is Officer Patel with the Willow Springs Police Department. I'm calling regarding your daughter, Rachel. A pause, a sharp intake of breath. Is she okay? Patel hesitated, meeting Holloway's gaze. She knew there was no easy way to say it. I'm so sorry, Mrs. Simmons. Rachel was found deceased in her apartment tonight. A silence stretched on the other end, long, cold, unnatural. Then no, that doesn't make sense. I just talked to her. The woman's voice cracked into a sob, deep and broken. Patel's throat tightened. I know this is devastating, and I am so sorry for your loss. We are investigating what happened. Right now, we don't have answers, but I promise you, we will find out what happened to Rachel. It was a promise she wasn't sure she could keep. Meanwhile, Holloway was on the phone with Emily Carter's father, Tom Carter, who answered immediately, as if he had been expecting something terrible. Mr. Carter, this is Detective Mark Holloway with the Willow Springs PD. No, the man cut him off, his voice shaking. No, don't say it. Holloway clenched his jaw. He had made this call too many times in his career, but it never got easier. I'm sorry, sir. Emily was found deceased tonight. The line went quiet. So quiet, Holloway thought he had hung up. Then, in a voice that barely registered, How? That was the question, wasn't it? Holloway looked back toward the open apartment door, where the forensic team moved around the perfectly undisturbed crime scene. How? That was exactly what they didn't know. Chapter 4. The Last Known Moments. Detective Mark Holloway and Officer Lisa Patel stood inside the Willow Springs Police Department's digital forensics lab, watching intently as Eric Monroe, the department's IT specialist, played back security footage from Willow Ridge Apartments. The grainy black-and-white feed showed the building's entrance, time-stamped 3 nights ago at 9:42 p.m. There, stepping through the front doors, were Emily Carter and Rachel Simmons. Holloway watched as the 2 young women entered the well-lit lobby, chatting casually, appearing completely normal. Emily had her backpack slung over one shoulder, keys in her hand, while Rachel was scrolling through her phone, smiling at something on the screen. They don't look distressed. Patel murmured. No, Holloway agreed, narrowing his eyes. But something changed once they got inside. Monroe fast-forwarded the footage. The two girls disappeared around the corner, heading toward the hallway that led to apartment 3B. The timestamp clicked forward. 9:44 p.m., Emily unlocks the door. Both girls step inside. The door closes. Then, nothing. The footage continued rolling through the hours, the timestamp shifting from 10 p.m. to midnight, then beyond. The apartment door never opened again. No one came in. No one left. For 3 entire days, apartment 3B remained sealed. And yet, somehow, those girls ended up dead. A digital timeline of fear, Holloway's pulse ticked up as Patel pulled up the forensic report from the girls' cell phones recovered from their nightstands. Last outgoing texts were at 12:13 a.m., the night they vanished, Patel said. She turned her screen toward Holloway, displaying Emily's final message, sent to Rachel. Emily, did you hear that? Rachel's reply came seconds later. Yeah, I thought that was you. Then, at 12:15 a.m., Emily sent another text. Emily, don't move. It was never responded to. That's the last communication before their phones went dark, Patel muttered. Holloway gritted his teeth. The messages painted a disturbing picture. The girls had been awake when whatever happened occurred. They had heard something, enough to make Emily warn Rachel not to move, which meant they weren't alone in that apartment. The journal entry back at the crime scene, Patel had combed through Emily Carter's personal journal, expecting to find class notes, reminders, or something mundane. But the last page told a very different story. Scrawled in rushed, almost frantic handwriting were 4 chilling words, "He's already inside." Patel's stomach twisted as she read it again, her fingers brushing the ink, as if she might somehow pull the meaning straight from Emily's mind. "Who the hell is he?" Patel murmured. Holloway, standing beside her, exhaled sharply. "That's what we need to find out." They turned to face the silent, undisturbed apartment, their eyes lingering on the locked door. If no one had entered, if no one had left, then who was already inside? Chapter 5. The Autopsy Report. The fluorescent lights buzzed softly in the Willow Springs medical examiner's office, casting a cold glow over the sterile steel tables. The bodies of Emily Carter and Rachel Simmons lay side by side, their lifeless forms unnervingly still. Dr. Henry Lawson, the county's chief medical examiner, had performed hundreds of autopsies in his career, but as he prepared to review his findings with Detective Mark Holloway and Officer Lisa Patel, a deep unease settled in his chest. "I've never seen anything like this," Lawson admitted, flipping through his report. "Nothing about this makes sense." Holloway and Patel exchanged a glance. That was becoming a recurring theme in this case. No cause of death. "Let's start with the basics," Holloway said, arms crossed. "What killed them?" Lawson exhaled, shaking his head. "That's the thing, I don't know." Patel frowned. "What do you mean you don't know?" "I mean there is no obvious cause of death," Lawson said. "No signs of trauma, no wounds, no bruising. Their internal organs were normal. No heart attack, no stroke, no aneurysm. Toxicology came back completely clean. No drugs, no poison, no alcohol, no foreign substances of any kind." Holloway stared at the medical examiner. That wasn't possible. 2 young, healthy women didn't just die for no reason. "So if we didn't find them like that," Holloway asked, voice edged with frustration, "would you assume they were still alive?" Lawson hesitated. "Medically speaking, yes." The signs of fear. "There were only 2 things out of the ordinary," Lawson continued, flipping to the next page of his report. "First, their pupils were dilated, like someone experiencing an extreme adrenaline surge." "Fear response?" Patel asked. Lawson nodded. "Exactly. It's the kind of reaction I see in people who die mid-panic attack or in severe distress. But again, there was no trigger for this reaction. Their bodies shouldn't have reacted this way unless they believed they were in immediate mortal danger." "Believed?" Holloway repeated. "Well, fear doesn't kill you outright," Lawson explained. "But something else did, something we can't see." Patel's fingers drummed on the table. "You said there was something else." Lawson grimaced. Their vocal cords were strained, both of them. Holloway felt his blood turn cold. From what? Screaming. The word hung in the air, heavy and unshakable. Patel inhaled sharply. "So you're telling me they screamed before they died?" Lawson nodded grimly. "Not just screamed. Screamed violently. Their vocal cords weren't torn, but they showed signs of intense use right before death. Holloway clenched his jaw. He had seen fear-induced deaths before, victims collapsing from heart failure, suffocation due to panic. But this was something different. Synchronized death. One more thing, Lawson added, pulling up the official time of death report. Emily Carter, 12:18 a.m. Rachel Simmons, 12:18 a.m. Patel's stomach dropped. Wait, you're saying they died at the exact same time? Down to the second, Lawson confirmed. Holloway's jaw tightened. That wasn't normal. Even in shared trauma cases, deaths weren't perfectly synchronized. It suggested something unnatural, something deliberate. What the hell does that mean? Patel asked, a chill running through her. Lawson exhaled. I don't know, but whatever happened in that apartment, it didn't leave a mark. It didn't use poison, weapons, or physical force. Holloway felt the weight of those words settle in his chest. Something killed those girls. Something that didn't need to touch them to do it. And whatever it was, they saw it first. Chapter 6. The Third Presence. The soft glow of the computer screen illuminated Eric Monroe's face as he sat hunched over the workstation in the Willow Springs Police Department's digital forensics lab. Detective Mark Holloway and Officer Lisa Patel stood behind him, their eyes fixed on Rachel Simmons' laptop, now fully charged and operational. I managed to recover the last video file, Monroe said, his fingers flying over the keyboard. It was corrupted when the laptop shut down, but I restored most of it. Holloway and Patel exchanged a glance. Play it, Holloway ordered. The last recording, 12:14 a.m. The screen flickered to life. The grainy webcam footage showed Rachel sitting on the couch in apartment 3B, her expression relaxed as she adjusted the laptop's angle. She was wearing an oversized hoodie, her hair in a messy bun. In the background, the faint sound of running water indicated that Emily was in the kitchen. Rachel picked up her phone and glanced at the screen. She typed something, most likely one of the last texts sent that night. Everything about her posture was normal, until it wasn't. Rachel's body suddenly stiffened. Her casual expression faded into confusion, then something else, something closer to fear. Her eyes flicked slightly to the left, tracking something just outside the webcam's frame. Her breathing hitched, her mouth parted slightly like she was about to speak. But she didn't. She just stared. Emily notices it too. 30 seconds passed. Then Emily entered the frame, mug of tea in hand, steam still rising from it. She had a small smile on her face until she saw Rachel's expression. Emily froze. Her eyes followed Rachel's, both of them now staring at the same unseen point, something just outside the webcam's reach. Emily's smile dropped instantly. She inhaled sharply, and the mug slipped from her fingers, shattering on the floor. She opened her mouth, as if to say something, but then, the distortion. The screen glitched violently, pixelating into a mess of static and flickering shadows. For half a second, something almost visible appeared in the noise, a shape. A dark figure, barely distinguishable, a shadow stretching unnaturally in the corner of the room. The distortion peaked, the screen flickered one last time, and then black, the aftermath. The screen went dark, the file ended, no screaming, no movement, just silence. Monroe slowly removed his headphones. His face was pale, his hands clenched into fists. That's it, he murmured. That's all there is. Patel exhaled, her pulse pounding in her ears. They saw something, she said, right before they died. Holloway's face remained impassive, but his mind was racing. What about the corruption at the end? He asked Monroe. Can you recover anything from that glitch? Monroe hesitated. I don't know. Whatever happened, it wasn't just a recording issue. It's like the data itself got scrambled when the laptop shut down. He shook his head. I'll keep working on it. But Holloway wasn't sure he wanted to see what else was hidden in that footage. Because one thing was now certain. Emily and Rachel weren't alone in that apartment. And whatever was with them, it never left. Chapter 7. The Shadow Figure. Detective Mark Holloway sat at his desk, reviewing the corrupted video file for the third time. No matter how many times he watched it, the same questions gnawed at him. What had Rachel and Emily seen? More importantly, where did it go? Officer Lisa Patel entered the room, dropping a thick folder onto his desk. Got the full forensic report back from the apartment, she said. Holloway barely glanced up, his eyes fixed on the screen. Let me guess. No fingerprints, no signs of entry, no sign that anyone else was ever there. Patel exhaled. Exactly. No forced entry, no disturbances, nothing missing, nothing out of place. And get this, there was no sign of an electrical surge or data corruption on Rachel's laptop. The tech team says the footage was scrambled in real time. Holloway frowned. What the hell does that mean? It means whatever they saw, whatever made them react like that, changed the recording as it happened. That wasn't possible, but then again, nothing about this case was possible. Enhancing the footage, Patel pulled up a chair beside Holloway as he clicked the frame-by-frame enhancement that Monroe had run earlier. The corrupted frames at the end of the video flickered, distorting in unpredictable patterns. Here, Patel pointed. Freeze it there. Holloway paused the footage at the exact moment before the screen glitched. Rachel and Emily were staring at something off-frame, but in the corner of the living room, a faint shadow stretched across the floor. That's not from them, Patel muttered. Holloway adjusted the contrast, enhancing the darkest areas of the image. The shadow deepened, taking on a more defined shape, and then they saw it, a figure, or at least the outline of one. It wasn't human. It was tall, impossibly thin, its limbs slightly too long, its head tilted unnaturally to the side. It didn't look like it was standing in the room, more like it was bleeding into the space from somewhere else. Jesus Christ, Holloway muttered. Patel swallowed. Was that standing behind them? Holloway zoomed in further. The moment Emily saw it, her pupils dilated. Her mouth opened in a silent scream, and then the distortion overtook the screen. The file ended. The audio disturbance, there's something else. Monroe's voice cut in from the doorway. He held a pair of headphones in his hand. We ran an enhanced scan of the audio in the corrupted footage. There was a frequency there, something we almost didn't pick up on. But when we isolated it... He handed Holloway the headphones. Holloway hesitated, then slid them on. Monroe clicked play. At first there was nothing but static. Then, something underneath it, a low whisper. Not a normal voice, something inhuman, distant, like it wasn't meant to be heard. Then it spoke. A faint, raspy voice, layered with something indescribable. He is watching. Holloway ripped the headphones off. What the hell was that? He demanded. Monroe looked shaken. We don't know, but it was recorded at the exact moment Rachel and Emily saw whatever they saw. Patel's face had lost all colour. You're telling me there was a third presence in that apartment? One that didn't leave prints, didn't leave evidence, but somehow left its voice in the recording? Monroe nodded. For the first time in his career, Holloway felt completely out of his depth. A pattern in the darkness, Patel sat back, rubbing her temples. This doesn't make sense. We're treating this like a murder, but what if? She hesitated, trying to find the right words. What if we're looking at this the wrong way? Holloway studied the enhanced image of the shadowy figure, unease clawing at his gut. What do you mean? Patel opened a file on her laptop. I started digging through old case reports. This isn't the first time something like this has happened in that apartment. Holloway frowned. Explain. Patel pulled up a news article from 1995. A double death in Willow Ridge Apartments, Unit 3B. A young couple had been found sitting upright on their couch, eyes open, frozen in fear. The cause of death? Unexplained. Patel flipped to another file. 2002. Another case, same apartment. A college student was found dead in his bed, no visible injuries, mouth open in a silent scream. It's happened at least 3 times before, Patel whispered. Holloway's stomach twisted. This wasn't random. Something was in apartment 3B. And whatever it was, it had been there for a long time. Chapter 8. The Apartment's Past. The fluorescent glow of Willow Springs Police Department's archive room cast long shadows as Detective Mark Holloway and Officer Lisa Patel sifted through decades-old records. The musty scent of aged paper filled the air as Patel flipped through a yellowed case file labelled Willow Ridge, Apartment 3B. The deeper they dug, the worse it got. This isn't just a one-time thing, Patel murmured, scanning the faded documents. It's happened over and over again. Holloway leaned over her shoulder, eyes narrowing at the pattern emerging from the pages. 1995, a young couple, found dead on their couch, eyes open in frozen terror. No signs of trauma, no cause of death. 2002, a college student found in his bed, mouth open, his vocal cords damaged as if he had screamed himself hoarse. No explanation. 2010, a young woman living alone, vanished without a trace. The apartment was locked from the inside. No evidence of a struggle. She was never found. Now, Emily Carter and Rachel Simmons. Holloway exhaled slowly. 5 cases, same apartment, same impossibility. Whatever's in that apartment, Patel said, flipping to a handwritten report from 1979, it's been there for a long time. The forgotten tenant. A faded tenant record from 1978 caught Holloway's eye. The apartment had once been occupied by a man named James Harrington, a recluse who lived in Unit 3B for over a decade, but there was no record of him ever leaving. There were no move-out documents, no forwarding address, no death certificate. He had simply disappeared. Holloway ran a quick search on his laptop, his fingers tapping the keyboard with increasing urgency. After a few minutes, his eyes narrowed at the screen. "Got something," he muttered. Patel peered over. The only mention of James Harrington in public records was an old newspaper article, one that hadn't been digitized until recently. Local man feared dead after months of isolation in apartment 3B. According to the article, Harrington had lived alone, rarely seen by neighbours. They reported strange noises coming from the apartment at night, muffled voices, whispers when no one was there. Then one day, silence. The landlord eventually broke in, expecting to find Harrington's body. But the apartment was empty. All of his belongings were still there, his clothes, his wallet, even a plate of untouched food, just like Rachel and Emily's apartment. It was as if he had vanished into thin air. A hidden space. Holloway leaned back in his chair, running a hand over his face. What the hell is happening in that apartment? Patel's expression darkened. There's something else. She pulled up the original blueprints of Willow Ridge Apartments, scanned from city archives. Look at this, she pointed. The original 1950s layout showed something the modern blueprint didn't. A small, hidden space behind the living room wall of Unit 3B. It had been sealed off decades ago. Holloway's pulse quickened. A hidden room. No one ever mentioned this? He asked. Not in the recent reports, Patel said. But what if it's still there? Holloway clenched his jaw. If there was a hidden space in apartment 3B and no one had entered it for decades, then maybe something else never left. Returning to apartment 3B, less than an hour later, Holloway and Patel stood outside the crime scene, flashlights in hand. The forensic team had cleared out, but the apartment still carried an unnerving weight, as if the very air inside was waiting for them to step back in. If there really is a hidden space, Patel murmured, we need to find it. Holloway pushed open the door. The apartment was just as they had left it, neat, undisturbed, frozen in time since the moment Rachel and Emily had died. But now they weren't looking at the crime scene. They were looking for something else. Patel ran her fingers along the living room wall, checking for inconsistencies. She tapped lightly, listening for hollow spaces beneath the drywall. Then a sound, a faint, unnatural echo. Patel and Holloway exchanged a glance. That's it, she whispered. Holloway stepped back and exhaled. We're opening it up. He grabbed a crowbar from his bag and wedged it against the edge of the drywall. With a sharp pull, the first chunk of plaster broke away. A stale, rotting scent seeped out, a smell that had been trapped for decades. Patel covered her nose, her stomach twisting. Jesus! Holloway kept prying away pieces of the wall, revealing a dark, narrow crawlspace. The air inside was thick, stagnant, untouched by time. Then his flashlight flickered over something. A small wooden chair sat in the cramped space, dust-covered, facing the living room. At the base of the chair, something else. A rotting leather notebook, its pages curled with age. Holloway bent down and carefully picked it up, flipping it open. The first few pages were filled with frantic handwriting. He is watching. He is waiting. He does not leave. Holloway's hands tightened around the notebook. Patel aimed her flashlight deeper into the crawlspace, revealing something else. A pile of deteriorated fabric, maybe a coat, and beneath it, a skeletal hand. Patel's breath caught in her throat. Holloway stared in horror. The long-dead body of James Harrington had been there all along. And yet, something else was still inside that apartment. Something that had never truly left. Chapter 9. The Hidden Chamber. The stench of rot and stale air thickened as Detective Mark Holloway and Officer Lisa Patel crouched before the hidden crawlspace. The skeletal remains of James Harrington lay crumpled beneath layers of decayed fabric, long dead, yet never truly gone. Holloway's flashlight flickered over the rotting leather notebook in his gloved hands. The frenzied writing filled its pages, the ink smudged with time. He is watching. He is waiting. He does not leave. The words repeated, page after page, growing more desperate. Then, near the end, something new. I made a mistake. I looked too long. Now he sees me too. Holloway's stomach turned. Jesus Christ, Patel murmured, still kneeling by the remains. He was here the whole time? Holloway didn't answer. His eyes were locked on the chair, the small wooden seat facing the peephole that looked into the living room. It had been occupied. For how long? Holloway's grip on the notebook tightened. We need to get forensics back in here, Patel said, stepping back from the hidden space. If Harrington died in here, we need to. Bang! The apartment door slammed shut. The air shifted, the temperature dropping instantly. Who's there? Holloway barked, drawing his weapon. Silence. Patel flicked her flashlight toward the living room, her heart pounding. The room remained still, unchanged, yet different. The shadows along the walls seemed darker. The space felt smaller. Something's wrong, Patel whispered. Then a sound, a breath, long, ragged, right behind them. Patel spun, flashlight slashing through the darkness. Nothing there, but the chair in the crawl space. It was rocking, slowly, back and forth. The notebook's last entry. Holloway forced himself to breathe, focusing on the notebook still clutched in his hands. He flipped to the final page, his hands steady despite the unnatural cold seeping into the room. Only one sentence remained, scrawled in shaky handwriting. I was wrong. He does leave, but only when he finds someone else. A deep, guttural creak echoed from the shadows. The rocking chair stopped. The darkness along the walls stirred. Holloway didn't wait to see more. We need to get out. Now. Patel didn't argue. They backed away, keeping their flashlights trained on the crawl space, the peephole, and the shadows shifting around them. The air felt heavy, as if the apartment itself was alive, watching them. They reached the door, but it didn't budge. Move! Holloway growled, shoving against it. Locked. From the inside, Patel's breath came faster. It won't open. Then the whispers started. Not from the crawl space, not from the walls, from right beside them. A breathy, distorted voice, low and vibrating. He sees you now. The lights flickered violently. Then everything went dark. Chapter 10. The Unfinished Nightmare. Darkness swallowed them. Detective Mark Holloway and Officer Lisa Patel stood frozen in the pitch-black apartment 3B, the air thick with something unseen, something that watched. The door was locked. The lights had died. And the whispers, they were too close. A breathy, distorted voice echoed around them, layered with something inhuman. He sees you now. Patel's heartbeat thundered in her chest. She reached for her radio, but it crackled with dead air. Holloway's grip tightened around his gun. He knew whatever was in this apartment wasn't something he could shoot. And then a noise, a single footstep. Not from behind, not from the crawl space, from the middle of the room, right in front of them. The escape. Get to the door, Holloway whispered. I can't see anything, Patel hissed back. Then the room shifted. Not physically, not in any way that made sense. But suddenly, the walls felt closer, the space around them tighter. Something moved past Patel, unseen but felt. A whisper skimmed her ear. Don't turn around. Patel's breath hitched, her body locked up, every instinct screaming to run, but to where? Holloway reached for his flashlight, flicking it on. For a split second, the beam illuminated the center of the living room. And there, just beyond the light's reach, a figure. Tall, too thin, too twisted. Its limbs stretched unnaturally long, as if it was shifting in and out of place. But the worst part, it had no face. Just a black void where its features should have been. The flashlight flickered violently, and then it lunged. Holloway didn't think. He rammed his shoulder into the door, Patel right behind him. It burst open. They stumbled into the hallway, gasping for air. Behind them, silence. Patel turned just in time to see the door to apartment 3B swing shut on its own. And then, nothing. The apartment was still. The whispers were gone. The thing, whatever it was gone. Sealing apartment 3B, the next morning, apartment 3B was officially sealed off. No more tenants, no more victims. The building's owner agreed to shut down the unit permanently, claiming it was unrentable. But Patel and Holloway knew the truth. It wasn't unrentable. It was waiting. Waiting for someone to move in, to watch too long, to be seen. The final recording. 2 weeks later, Holloway sat at his desk, staring at the recovered footage from Rachel's laptop. There was one more thing they hadn't noticed before. As the glitching video ended and the static overtook the screen, there was a final frame, barely half a second long. It showed Rachel's face, frozen in terror. Her eyes locked on something behind the camera. And just over her shoulder, a tall, faceless figure, watching, waiting, and then the screen cut to black. And so apartment 3B remains, untouched, unseen, yet never truly empty. Because it doesn't need doors to open, it doesn't need footsteps to move, it only needs one thing. For someone to look too long. Because the moment you see it, it sees you too.
Every story has an end, but here, the mysteries never stop. Thank you for watching and being a part of this journey into the unknown. Your support keeps these stories alive, and there's plenty more waiting for you. We drop 3 new stories every week, so if you crave suspense, the unexplained and the downright chilling, make sure you're subscribed and ready for what's next. Until then, keep your lights on, your doors locked, and remember, some stories stay with you long after they're told.